the June 30th special session of the Johnson County Council. Let's begin with invocation. Pete, would you mind to lead us?
Not at all. If we could take a moment to pray. Dear God, our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet at this special meeting of the Johnson County Council. We appreciate the folks we have in attendance. We pray that they'll be with us during this meeting to guide us to correct decisions. And we pray that this council is able to listen, consider all information brought before it. And we pray for these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. You would please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What? Roll call, please.
Tyson,
Here.
Melinda Reesmer,
Here.
Pete Ketchum,
Here.
Jonathan Myers,
Here.
Rob Henderson,
Present.
John Myers,
Here.
John Hill.
Here.
Be open for public.
No, just for discussion today. We don't have an ordinance passed. Anything. Discussion in our direction.
All right. So the purpose of this meeting is to discuss funding options for some of the infrastructure projects that we have, specifically looking at an edit tax. And previously there was some discussion on possibly using a combination of funding sources, a lower edit rate combined with some of the revenues from the jail lit that was passed a few years ago. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this over to Rob. He is sort of our, he's done a lot of legwork and research on the edit tax.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jim. And I want to, I've got to find it. Amy or Sheena, did you by chance print that attachments?
I just have one.
That's why, it was just for Jim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I figured it-
that's
I
fine.
figured Amy was doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Here
I want to thank Luke for also creating an Excel spreadsheet that is very user-friendly and flexible. So the thought is, again, behind all this is there are a significant amount in both volume and dollar cost of infrastructure work needed in the county. Question becomes, how do we fund it? And several weeks ago, council and the commissioners met. We declined to move forward with NDOT on the relinquishment project, which would have potentially presented up to about 35 million to the county. But it came with strings attached that were not viewed to be favorable or long-term advantageous to us, possibly disadvantageous. So we went back to the drawing board a little bit to see how we could fund this through a combination of rainy day funds, reappropriation of jail operating expenses to the criminal justice jail lit fund, and some combination of an edit. So cash on hand plus future revenue from the jail lit, excuse me, and possibly an edit, economic development income tax, to accomplish funding some of these forthcoming expenses. The one that we all have talked about is the Smith Valley Road project from west of 135 out towards I-69-37, which had a price tag of about 56 million, I recall. So there's another approximately $50 million in the spreadsheet that Luke prepared that had other projects identified and some just general ballpark needs. So I think we're here today to talk about a path forward, whether it be now, if it is now, how do we do it? Or if it's not now, maybe when. The timeline, and I see Jeff Peters is here. Thank you for being here. But I think it's to September 30th, we have to if we move forward with an edit, we have to have it done by the September 1 or September 30th. Two.
Yeah, if you adopt by September 1, they will start to collect those taxes. in
October 1.
If you do it before November 1, they will start to be collected January 1 of the ensuing year. But either one of those scenarios gives you a distribution in the ensuing year.
So did everyone follow that? So the earliest, if we wanted or need $1 available on January 1, we would need to take action as a council through an ordinance prior to September 1 of this year.
No, you can do either one of those. You can delay it all the way to November 1. It's just your reserve pool
Yeah,
of cash will not be as big if you wait to start collections
January
January
1.
1 versus October.
okay, got it. Thank you. So and appreciate that. I thought there was another 6 or 7 months out there before we could do that. But so this is, we're here to talk about really how we feel about an edit and what would be an appropriate edit, if it is appropriate at all, given our current economic climate, given inflation, cost of construction, and all those things weighed against the need of the work that's been either delayed for whatever reason and or needs to happen now to support I-69 and other efforts of the highway department here locally to improve our county infrastructure. Does that sound about right to everybody? All right. So one of the things we've talked about in prior meetings was an edit rate of 0.2%. Recall that with an edit, other jurisdictions will receive money, cities and towns primarily, not your school corps or your fire protection districts or whatever. So of the pool of money collected, there would be monies that would flow then to Greenwood, Franklin, Trafalgar, and so forth. And those estimates were in a prior spreadsheet. They're not on the one that Luke prepared. The county's portion of that is captured in Luke's spreadsheet, and that's the one I'm kind of working from today. And, you know, it would be a tick under $4 million annually. That is 0.2% edit rate. That combined with cash on hand and the reappropriation of reappropriation, excuse me, 2022 of jail expenses over to the jail lit, and the future appropriation of jail operating expenses to the jail lit. Those things combined create cash and cash flow to start chipping away at these needs. And Luke has kind of chunked that out, beginning with calendar year 2022 out through 2031, and how those dollars would be spent. I'm sorry, how much dollars would be spent on a particular project. So that's kind of stepping through the spreadsheet. So for me, the need is there. There's a way to get there, but I will be honest in that, and in the last 30 to 45 days, excuse me, I've been fighting this little cough. Last 30 to 45 days, I've had apprehension as inflation continues to grow and is growing at rates that we haven't seen since the early 80s. We're likely in a recession. It just hasn't been called that yet. Probably won't until next month. And of course, with inflation, price increases are going up. So I have been apprehensive. I was kind of on board with this January, February, March, and likely would have been supportive. My honest position right now is I think it would be tough on our taxpayers to impose a 0.2% rate. But I also know that there is never a good time, economy aside, there's never a good time for a new tax. But I do believe infrastructure needs are warranted, and I think that's why we're here to talk about it. Jim, did that
Yes,
introduce it?
yes.
All right.
So the purpose of calling this meeting was primarily a time issue because I was under the impression that we had to pass it by September 1st, which would give us above July and August. It appears that we're not under such a restrictive time crunch, so we've got a little more time than what was anticipated. I think I would like to hear from each individual council member on their thoughts and their appetite for approaching or even discussing or moving forward any further with an edit for this year.
If I might,
Yes, but
the pandemic, I think, froze a lot of initiatives that were ongoing. And meanwhile, I-69 screamed forward, was actually accelerated. So a lot of the angst that we're all feeling now and a lot of the quandaries that we're faced with is because of I-69 and the White River Township area that needs to be addressed. And I know Luke can probably address this better, but I believe that's one of the reasons why we're being pressed. But I share your views, Rob, especially as of late. It's pretty tough. If we enter a recession, it's going to be reduced revenues. To what extent, we don't know. And no one has a crystal ball. But I thought I'd just mention that. And also, I am opposed to utilizing the criminal justice lit for the roads. I do not want to see that happen. We have enough responsibility regarding our public health and mental health improvements that we're leaning towards. So I don't think that would be a good move to put something on the back burner, probably that not even on the back burner at this time. It's probably still on the shelf. It needs to be dusted off because of the pandemic.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said thus far. I think we need to pay the bills, right? So we're gonna need, my opinion, to have some type of credit enacted. I would like to see it very minimal, and I would like to see us lean on to some responsible amount for jail that's available. We've and use a good portion of the rainy day fund. I agree that things are tough right now. I don't know how some of the people are making it with the gas and just everything is for someone who lives paycheck to paycheck. They must be going into debt big time. It's necessary that we sustain our infrastructure and pay our bills. But I think we need to take action. But oftentimes people use the term "kick the can down the road," and I'll tell you what, I'll give it a little kick today. As far as dealing with the big picture, it's going to have to. Some of it's going to have to wait.
You always come down this way first. What is the lit right now that we're paying for the jail?
Currently, excuse me, it's at a 0.2.
Oh, so that's what we're paying right now. That's
Well, maybe I misunderstood your question. The lit rate, the criminal justice lit rate that is assessed to income taxpayers is 0.2. And then what we did with that is we went and bonded, that became the repayment source for a bond to finance the construction of the jail. And then the proceeds that are collected off the lit, the criminal justice lit, go to repay that debt, which will be retired in, there'll be one payment, one installment in 2025. And then after that, it's retired.
And so using the ARPA funds is not an option.
Say
Using
ARPA
ARPA
funds.
Yeah, so with ARPA, and there's folks here who may know more, but with ARPA, there's approximately $10 million of discretionary funds that could be used almost for any purpose that government has or needs. But because those are discretionary, they have those strings attached, and they're been identified or discussed for other uses.
I guess I'm kind of having a problem with it being an income tax, because we have a lot of people in the county who benefit from the roads that aren't going to be not paying into it. And that's my issue. And I think if we're going to do a tax, it needs to be addressed. It needs to be fair.
John?
Well, I agree with Jonathan T. You know, this has been kicked down the road long enough. And it is tough times, but I don't think we can kick it anymore with the roads the way they are and the county growing. I think we need to do something to move forward and not sit back.
Ron?
I agree with John that there never is a right time. The right time is to do nothing is never the right time. And it's my phrase, it's everybody's jumping on and kicking the can down the road. And if not now, then when? And if we don't do all, then what part? To do nothing is not an answer. I don't think we can do nothing, because there will always be something that will cause us to sit back and say, it's not the right time. We've heard that for a number of years, and there were reasons for it, and they were justifiable and acceptable for those who were in elected positions at that point in time. But I think our responsibility is to do whatever is reasonable and fair, and understanding that I don't understand if we have the ability to what Melinda was suggesting, that there is some other opportunity, other form of tax. Is anybody aware of any other than the wheel tax that?
Gas tech would be the fairest.
Yeah,
way,
but not us. We can't take
Right.
any action on that. So, I mean, it's been laid out. We got papers upon papers telling us what the problem is. 2031 is how far out you've got, Luke, on your, or whoever's, you got so many different papers that was taking this going out now 9 years in the future. If we did nothing for 9 years in the future, these numbers would be unbelievably more than what they are now. So I believe we have to do something. And when you compare it to whomever provided us the county tax rates for comparable counties, we are not the highest. There are many who are higher. There are some that are lower, but in sizes of counties that we have, Elkhart, a little bit bigger. They're a total of 2% at lit. I mean, there's all the reasons why. And I guess my challenge to all of us and my challenge to myself is doing nothing is not an answer. I don't know that doing everything is the answer, but we've got to do something. And that's the tough part about it. And when do we do that something? And the question I have a follow-up for Mr. Peters is that if we didn't do it in those time periods you were talking about, then when is the next opportunity?
Opportunity would be anytime after November 1, but then collection would not start until the following year, October 1. Distribution until January.
So we would lose a year's worth of collection, which would put us a year farther behind on doing some of the projects that need to be done. but not all of them are going to be funded by the income tax. So, it just justifies why doing nothing, in my opinion, is not the right approach to take. And none of us can sit up and say it's something we want to do, but we got to decide if we have to do it. And I think we have to do it.
Okay, well, thank you all. I'll give my thoughts on it. They haven't changed from a couple of meetings ago when we had this discussion. I think anyone up here would agree that this is not the ideal time with the pending recession and inflation the way it is right now. However, I don't know that we have much of a choice. I guess we, to Ron's credit, either we do something or we do nothing. I think we at least have to get the ball rolling, get the projects that are of highest priority started. The way to do that, we have basically two options. Well, yeah, so we can pass an edit tax at a rate sufficient to fund whatever projects we deem are the highest priority. Or we can pass a lower edit rate and use some of the funds that our taxpayers are already subject to through the jail lit. I think that this shows that there's going to be a substantial, if we keep a 0.2% jail lit, there's a substantial amount of money after removing or using those funds to pay some of the jail's operating expenses, thus transferring that money towards the road projects. I think you can kill two birds with one stone there and get many of the criminal justice mental health projects done, and also have enough money left over to substantially assist in funding some of the infrastructure projects. And that's what I'm in favor of. I'm in favor of taxing our constituents and citizens as little as we possibly can. And we're already taxing them on the jail lit with excess funds generated. So let's use those excess funds and pass the most reasonable increase in an edit that we can to get the most highly prioritized projects done. And then future councils can, maybe when we come out of the recession and times are a little bit better, they can choose to increase. They always have the option of increasing the edit, don't they?
So it's an option, yes, but I think it goes through this very same
Right.
process. Yeah.
So I think, from where I stand, I think this council is tasked with doing something to get the ball rolling. I don't think we have to do it all. We can do the bare minimum to get that started, and future councils can pick up, and when the time is right, if they so choose, increase that amount and create additional funding for future projects.
I think we need to clarify one point, though. When we say excess, there's only an excess if you do no additional jail lit qualify or criminal justice projects, but there are criminal justice projects sitting there, community corrections. So the excess is not just a bonus amount of money that we could literally do anything with. There is a need. It's been justified. We're working on it as we move forward with the campus design and all of that. So, that money can be allocated for those kinds of projects as those move forward. So it's not an excess in that sense. It's a spendable amount that can be justified and is justified.
I don't disagree. However, the account balances as we go forward are substantial amounts. And by 2031, the ending cash balance, if we do no other projects, is almost $55 million.
And my point is, we will be doing other projects, the community corrections and the others, so.
If they reduce the rate down to 0.10, when the jail is paid off, that's going to cut that in half.
But they don't have to do that.
They don't have to do that.
And that's for future councils to decide.
And I don't agree with Rob and Peter to pay Paul. I think jail lit is for future projects because there's a sunset on it. I don't know what year it is. I think it was 22 years total.
I think so.
And right now we're paying their salaries and stuff out of the lit. When that sunsets, it's going to have to come back out of the general fund unless there's a new law changes. So I prefer to leave the jail lit alone.
And I agree with John on that. And you that have been on the council longer than any of us, the three of you, you might be able to remember what happened with community corrections, but community corrections had to take a back seat. And when it was already on the front burner to the criminal justice program because of the Department of Corrections and the need to provide more jail space and to make the jail safer. So I think the community corrections is a high priority right now, along with the health department. I don't think there can be a bigger need with all the things we've got going on with the opioid crisis and other things that are pushing the limits of our health department. Also on the rainy day fund, Pete, you addressed that. We have a lot of issues that rainy day was put in place for that are coming our way. The increased cost of fuel, we haven't heard yet what the increased cost of fuel is going to be to all of our departments, but I bet we'll be hearing that pretty soon. The other things, that I'm not aware of specifically, but some of the things we learned about in our conference this past weekend was the rising cost of insurance. So I think for us to take away from our cash balances and our rainy day funds, I think we have things that we need to utilize that for that are of better use.
I understand sort of my thoughts on all of that, though, and no one's right, wrong, or indifferent, but we've got $10 million of ARPA funds that we could use that it's been decided that there's more important things than the roads to use it for.
Well, we have delineated some of those funds for highway. And
3 million.
Mr. Commissioner, do you remember what the amount is?
Well, I'm simply saying that depending on who you ask, there's more important projects than
Yeah,
one. I think it comes down to just as we do in our, each of our family budgets. You have your wants and your needs, and I think we need to differentiate which is which right now, because I
right,
don't think the backs of the taxpayers can handle funding all of our wants.
right. Yeah.
So and no one's right or wrong up here. I mean, these are all very valid points.
Yeah.
Just a little bit different philosophy on how to get there, but from what I'm hearing, there is an appetite to keep these discussions going. I'm also hearing that there's also quite a split on how we get to the finish line on the sources. So
From what I've just been listening, it sounded like we need 4 to pass, right? So there was 3 people up here who kind of was already on the same page. To me, it doesn't seem like we can continue to discuss it, but it doesn't look like it's gonna have to take too much.
I haven't voted yet.
No, there's been no vote, but it seemed comments are pretty similar.
Yeah, it's comments at this time, I think.
Well, following the timetable, one way or the other, if you could clarify this, that is this require 2 readings or whatever we
Yes.
do? All right, so and we would have to have a reading in August because it's too late to do it for July.
No, it's not too late to do it for July. The public hearing would be in August.
All right,
So to make this more fair, is there any other options besides an income tax, like the property tax, or does it have to be this?
Well, the property
Right.
taxes are capped.
Yeah, and if we got into a referendum, that is a whole different animal. And I'll ask Jeff Peters, this kind of kickstarted with an email to Jeff from me saying, this is a challenge we have. Our problem is road funding, infrastructure funding. What's the best way to solve it? I understand edit seems to be a widely used option. And Jeff, if you could kind of,
Yeah, and what I would say is that typically,
can you come to the podium?
typically counties cannot utilize property taxes for road projects. Cities and towns can, but not counties. One exception is there's a public works statute in 36-941 that allows for small projects of $2 million or less. And we've got some bond councils to opine that that is acceptable for a county to use property taxes for a road bridge type project. So kind of takes property tax off the rolls. So we have to look to income tax or other alternatives. The economic development income tax is probably the most widely used throughout the state. I think there are like 73 out of the 92 counties that have an economic development income tax as part of their expenditure rate for income taxes.
What about just the sales tax?
You don't have any control over sales tax, to my knowledge,
No control.
right? Or gas tax.
Mr. Peters, how many other counties surrounding us are involved in similar discussions? Are you aware of any?
I'm not around. Do work with the city of Martinsville. They and Morgan County do have economic development income tax.
And that's because of 69.
I don't know that it's because of 69. I think it predates that, but they do have a lot of issues. They, like you, have established TIF districts to try and capture growth that's going to come off of that you potentially might be able to use that to help fund some of that infrastructure in the future. And that's one other, I think, good point of, if you do establish an economic development income tax, you've already established the TIF districts where potentially you might want to fund improvements and projects off of these developments that occur within that TIF district along 69. Because you're an early TIF district and won't have many developments, if you decide that you want to leverage that revenue stream and issue bonds, you will likely have to pledge a backup revenue. If you have edit in place, that is a good backup revenue to pledge to make sure that you can sell those on the open market at a good rate.
yeah, Jeff, that's a great point. Given our infancy in the redevelopment commission and TIF, the infrastructure will always have a need. There'll be, maybe it's 100 million now. In 10 years, it's another 100 million, whatever. But that's a great point about the breadth of the language of an edit allows for that type of use, infrastructure in particular and other economic development to where we're not handcuffed or there's other uses. So it's a great point to make. And I'm glad you did.
Yeah, and one of the other things was several years ago when the legislature addressed the economic development income tax, they took off the complete economic development requirement. And there is a place in the statute says you can use it for any municipal purpose. Now, you have to locate all that within your economic development plan. But it does, as Rob says, gives you a lot of flexibility to combat things that you may want to address in the future.
Okay, so my original question is that if we move forward to get it to a vote somewhere along the line, there would have to be an introduction. I can see your head, but
Oh, you're asking
there
me.
had to be an introduction in the latest in August
No, it just depends on when you want it to go into effect.
for, let's say, October
If you want
1st.
to go into effect in October, then yes, you have to do it in July and August.
So what would we wait for to do it is my question. What's the advantage of waiting? If we need to get a vote, then let's get a vote, one way or the other and do something. Because we do have other things happening in August called budget hearings.
Yeah.
So we're going to be, a little bit tied up with a lot of stuff. So I'm not sure what delaying until November accomplishes other than the loss of potential revenue and then waiting till next year. Does anybody come up with that? Do anybody have the number, what that number is that we lose if we waited a year? Lose and not collecting it? I didn't.
Well, if we did a 0.2% edit, our estimated annual collection is a tick under $4 million. It's like 3,993,000.
All right, so we'd have a loss of that not collected for a year.
It's not a lot, it's just forgone.
Well, I mean, it's,
But yeah,
but the increase of product and then
Sure.
for the services would go up.
time delays and, yeah.
It would proportionally go up. So, I say, let's get it up there. Let's get a vote on it. Let's go forward one way or the other. And the only way you can do that is, we can have these general discussions, but we need to put it up there where we can get an answer from all of us.
I'd like to hear from Luke a little bit on some of this as far as cash flow.
Thank you,
Luke,
Jeff.
You have some immediate needs, and when are you running out of money?
Luke Maston, Highway Supervisor. If you account for all of the federal aid or large projects that we have going on, that are currently underway, that design has started on, that accounts for all of the savings that we have available right now in our normal highway funds. So realistically, if we were to, and we're approaching the season of applying for new federal aid projects, realistically, we may not have the cash available to fund all of the phases, our portion of all of the phases that would need to be funded undertaking a new project. The only realistic alternative is to reduce the amount of funding that we put towards our annual maintenance program. That's really the only way to continue to move forward with capital projects. Obviously, that then creates longer term problems as we're not able to keep up with maintenance and ultimately a larger outlay in the future than had we been able to try and keep up with that maintenance as it was needed.
What are fuel costs and material costs doing to you now?
They're not helping, that's for sure. We have not started the bulk of our summer operations. We've done a little bit of paving and a little bit of chip seal. That will kick off here shortly. That's when we start going through the largest amount of fuel, just from all of the trucking that we do. So,
And all those are petroleum-based products.
oh, yeah, yes, diesel in particular. So to this point, we have had to pay more per gallon, just like everyone else. We're not really going to see that fuel budget amount start to nosedive until we really get into the swing of our paving and our chip seal operations and start running a lot more miles. And that will be here pretty soon.
So will you be building contingencies into new projects for fuel or?
So we have a specific fuel line item in our budget. And when I put the budget together every year, I will look back at previous years' fuel billing data And in July, I'm making a guess on what the fuel price is going to be the next year. But as I submit my budget this year in July, that fuel line item that is budgeted will be probably quite a bit higher than what is in our current budget right now. And that assumes that I'm not going to have to come back for this year's budget before the end of the year if we end up expending what we have budgeted right now. So yes, I anticipate my budget for 2023 will include quite a bit higher amount in our fuel line item.
And also for projects, I was thinking if you build in contingencies, that takes a little bit of risk away from the contractors or the suppliers. And then what they don't use reverts back to the county again. So I think that's a great tool. We'd like to see you use that.
Sure. Luke, I feel dumb for asking this, but there's going to be an interchange at Smith Valley or an overpass, right? That was my dumb question. When is that anticipated to come online? Do you have a calendar year when that is? That 2025, 2026?
Should be 2024.
2024.
Of the 3 interchanges in the county or that abut the county, Smith Valley is the last one.
Last one, okay. So if that thing comes online, flips a switch, and Smith Valley, our responsibility for Smith Valley is not complete. That's bad, right? I mean, it's not going to be good for residents, business owners, school corporations, anybody that utilizes Smith Valley Road. That's going to be really cumbersome for them.
It's going to be awful.
It's going to be terrible.
Losing the access at Fairview Road, which we still have at the moment during construction. But then all of the other access points that used to exist between Smith Valley Road and 144. Yes, we're anticipating the 2-lane current configuration of Smith Valley is not going to be able to handle that traffic.
So we're
Sorry, I was just gonna ask, best case scenario, what's your timeline for if you would get the green light, would you even be able to have that road project completed before the interchange was done?
Realistically, no. If money was not an object, I could see at least a portion of that under construction by 2025. Our plan to accomplish that project starts at the interstate and moves to the east. We think that obviously because it connects to the interchanges where we're going to see the most traffic, we will start to lose some traffic up and down Morgantown Road. So our primary focus at the beginning is that section, that western section. On the spreadsheet that I provided, where the different phases for Smith Valley Road are listed, there's a year in parentheses out to the right of that. Those years were just a comparison for the years that the funding for those phases, had the county pursued the relinquishment agreement, that is the years that we would have received the federal dollars for those particular phases. So had we moved forward with the relinquishment, we were still looking at 2026 or 2027 federal funding to actually do the construction.
So the design's not being done now for Smith Valley?
We are on hold. We have gone through the consultant selection process. Our consultants have prepared their contracts, but we have not moved forward with in-depth review or bringing those forward because at the moment we do not have design funding. We're looking at that $3.6 million amount, somewhere around there. And we have to have that money identified and appropriated so that we can move forward with those contracts and actually start the design work.
I want to bring back a point that was made. I'm not sure if it was Rob that did it or whoever, but somewhere along the line, we received a document that had the annual cost median household income of 72,440. The impact was $297.
That initial estimate was based on an edit rate of 0.42.
Okay,
That was 0.42. So we've been talking today at about 0.2, so under half of that number.
so it'd be
So
$150.
$100,000 income would be $200 a year,
All right,
is what we're talking about today.
all right. And when you take that by 12 months, it's $20, $25, well, less than $25 a month in priority changes in people's spending habits to get it down to the nitty gritty.
Right, yeah, I mean, $200 divided by 12 would be $18 a month or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah,
And my point being, when I drove by all the restaurants, $18 is about, Applebee's is about, one meal, 1.5 meal.
fancy like.
I mean, it's a matter of what we establish as people in our community as
Mhm.
priorities. And I like to bring it back to those of you who have dealt with this in the past, have heard me say it. How many Big Macs is that? And the current cost of a Big Mac? Remember that, Jeff? Well, Big Mac is $5.32 or something like that. So that's 2 less Big Macs a family a month.
Well, there's some people that can't afford that, 1 or 2. So let's stay away from that. If we could. And just stick to the numbers.
Well, that is the number. That's the impact on the taxpayer. $12, $18 a month for $100,000. So what you said, Rob?
Yeah, $100,000 taxable income would equate to $200 a year.
And that's for those that had taxable income. Social Security is not taxable.
Social Security is not taxable.
So getting back to it. From what I've heard, I don't know that there's enough support to appear for, okay, let's recap. It appears that there is enough support for an edit. It does not appear that there's enough support to tap into the lit funds in combination with an edit. So I think the $1 million question literally is what would a 2.2% edit, if we were to pass that, fund? Would that get the Smith Valley Road project done? Or are we looking at, but because I can tell you, I'm probably not going to support anything higher than a 0.2. Not at this time. I'm willing to get the ball rolling, but I'm not. I'm not going to overburden our taxpayers in a time where people are hurting.
So the spreadsheet that I expanded on, what Rob had already done, is intended to be a tool where you can change some of those variables and see how they impact that list of projects. So a 0.2% edit, for example, that can be plugged into the spreadsheet that we were looking at. And then you can visualize how far down the list that gets us. But it also accounts for if the criminal justice lit was changed or not. That's a variable that you can enter in there as well. If expenditures that are currently in the general fund were moved to the criminal justice lit, you can put that in as well. So
Yeah, I understand that, but it doesn't appear that there's an appetite to do that.
I understand.
So what I'm asking is, if we were to just look solely on funding the infrastructure projects with a 0.2% edit, not getting into the jail lit, not getting into rainy day fund, what would that get us?
So we can change those variables.
Well, sorry, Luke, simply put, it's $56 million and you've got $4 million a year. So you're looking at a 14-year, if you're just not going to go bond, if you're going to just go with cash on hand or cash flow, you're just looking at a 14-year build out of Smith Valley Road at that rate. If you are able, it's not very favorable today, but maybe in 2 years it's different. go to the bond market, and I'm gonna look at Jeff here, and say, we need $56 million today, we're gonna repay it with $4 million. You're probably gonna have to finance that over 20 to 25 years. We have to do some math here. Certainly couldn't retire it in 15 years, probably 20 to 25, and you're probably gonna pay a rate somewhere between 5 and 6%-ish today. And that interest expense over that is killer. That's kind of was what started us thinking about alternate routes, right? So that to me is, I think, the quick and dirty answer to your question, and to kind of make it super simple. We point two doesn't get it done. And that's one project out of, we're kind of, shooting the moon here on one project.
Jim, as far as using a portion of the jail lit, I kind of heard 3 people indicate that would be something to take a closer look at. And I heard 3 people say, no, there's one person that didn't really give a clear indication on which way they want to go. So I don't know. I didn't get the impression that was off the table.
Well, I only heard, and we can clarify, but I only heard you and I in favor of
I
that.
believe,
Well, I just, after kind of hearing everybody,
I don't want to put you on the spot. But
No, it's all
I
right.
thought you were kind of leaning in that direction.
well, I just was just thinking that this is nothing short of a financial emergency. And brought on to us a little earlier than what we thought. And as with any emergency, whether it be with my business or personally, I start, wrapping things down and not spending on the extras. And so I guess I'm saying I'd rather forego the extra projects so we can free up the cash for this emergency. Meaning the extra, hey, I work in healthcare. I get it. There is a crisis, but that's an extra project. That's a want, not necessarily, and this is an urgent need.
What extra project are we saying?
Well, John T had mentioned some projects about,
I mean, there's no extra, jail lit, maybe we got some confusion, jail lit. The jail lit with those numbers that are on there are for future projects, which there is an absolute demand. Maybe there's not been a vote on what that demand is, and maybe all the processes have not taken place, but there isn't anybody I've heard say that we shouldn't be moving forward with community corrections to correct the deficiencies we have structurally on a building for community corrections and or mental health and or everything else. So, that putting a project on the back burner, if that's what you're talking about, Jim, I'm a little bit confused of what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is, if you look at these numbers, by 2031, if all we did was fund the current jail debt service and operating expenses, there would be $59 million left. So let's say that we do build a new community correction center, maybe 12 to 15 million, 14 million. That's a little dent in that 59. And then a board of health building or mental health complex. What I'm saying is I think that we can get it all done or a good portion of it. We may have to make some concessions, and also use $4 or $5 million a year out of it to fund these road projects right now.
yeah, I just think we have to do what's best for the greater good, because and the greater good is we've got a lot of responsible taxpayers coming and going, and we got to do what's right for them.
I'd like to, I don't want to derail the discussion that we're in right now about the criminal justice lit. I think I was clear on that, wasn't I? But I didn't not want to use that. Okay. The point 2, it's what we're doing if we do this and we do these road projects is going to create some external pressures on municipalities. right? So as part of this lit funding scenario, and I'm going to go with the 0.2, and I'm going to read these, Rob, and tell me if I'm wrong or not. But Franklin would get 2.1, Greenwood would get 2.6, Bargersville, 370,000, Edinburgh, 335,000, New Whiteland, 149,000, Princess Lakes, 55,000, Trafalgar, 56,000, and Whiteland, 138,000. So that's built into that's baked in the cake. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So that will help our municipalities and incorporated areas to maybe withstand some of the burdens of our increased populations that are created by our economic developments.
And to expand on that, Jonathan, T, I think there was one meeting where we commented it would be nice to collaborate with these cities and towns to say that, hey, these first few years, let's work together on kind of shared infrastructure, right? Things that kind of where things come together, work and make that happen, knowing that we don't control it. And maybe there's interlocals and things like that, but like at Smith Valley and 135, we start just west of 135. So there's a sliver there where it's the city of Greenwood. Maybe we say, well, with Greenwood, how about dedicate a little of that money that you're receiving to help us with this stretch, for example. So there might be some common good there, but yes, the cities and towns with zero political risk will benefit from this undoubtedly. And what they do with it is kind of up to them. I will say, I want to be clear for those either listening at home or in the audience, when we talk about the criminal justice slit, that's what we've kind of nicknamed it. It's correctional and rehabilitation facilities is kind of the broader, more appropriate term. And it's for the construction and operation thereof. And we can't appropriate directly from that fund over to road. What we are doing is taking what otherwise a general fund expense, which would be jail operations, and saying and attaching that to that criminal justice slit fund, thereby leaving a larger balance here that we can go to the highway. So there's a mechanism. So we're not, I don't want there to be any confusion that we're taking criminal justice money and going over here, because in theory, any general fund expense, we could kind of shift around and do it. This just happens to be a priority for us right now. And I have not weighed in on that conversation. My opinion would be to kickstart it with a rainy day appropriation in 2022. My opinion would be to also, for the balance of this year, appropriate jail operating expenditures, reappropriate that from the criminal justice lit fund, thereby eliminating that from the general fund and freeing up some money. And then I would say on an annual basis, at least the next budget cycle, that's only one I want to have input in, would be not to exceed 50% of the operational expense coming out of the criminal justice lit in order to appropriately fund a balance. My assumption is future councils are going to keep it at 0.2. There's been talk, and I'm the guy talking about non-binding resolutions that knocking it in half, and that's all good. And I would still love to see that happen. But my assumption is future councils are going to keep that revenue stream in place at that rate, and that will build out nicely and can certainly accommodate construction of facilities that would qualify as correctional or rehabilitation. So that's my weigh in on that.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, with that, in the purpose of hashing this stuff out now is we are in a little bit of a time pressure if we are going to pass this by September 1st. So going into next month's regular meeting, we're going to have to be prepared to take action in the form of a first vote. So what we really need to do here is solidify where we stand as a whole on how we want to move forward with this. So what I'm hearing is we do have a majority that are interested in using 50% of the jail lit, combined with a 0.2% edit and some funds, monies from the rainy day funds.
At some point in time. So that 50% is not now, correct?
Well, my comment just a second ago was whatever is left for jail expenditure in 2022, we go ahead and reappropriate that expenditure from the criminal justice lit and not from the general fund lit. So there's some mechanisms here that like salaries and things that it gets kind of tricky. So, we'd want to obviously work with the auditor on that, but my thought is to go ahead and that kickstarts the 2022 funding and can start with, for example, the design phase. That could go a long way in starting Smith Valley design this year and rather than 2023.
Yeah, and the truth of this matter is really we are just taking action on a 2% edit, enacting a 0.2%, 0.2% edit. The rest of it, that will come at budget time when we decide, hey, what do we want to transfer out of the general fund and into the jail lit as far as operating expenses. And each year going forward, you as a council, it won't be me or him, but you as a council will have to decide, this is how much these road projects are going to cost this year. The edit tax is producing $4 million a year. This is what we're going to need. Do we want to continue taking this out of the jail lit? But that's going to be for each individual council, each budget season to determine. So essentially what we are agreeing upon is moving forward, getting the edit tax on the July agenda, and then taking a first vote next month.
And with all the things, worksheets we've had, if we could have whomever, Luke or Rob or whoever, consolidate it to one, because we got so many different ones.
Right.
And these are the numbers that we're only looking at, because sometimes it looks like people are looking at different set of numbers, and
That's fair.
I think that would be appropriate that we're all looking at the exact set of numbers.
Are there any other data out there that we would want to see that we could gather between now and that July meeting? You may not know it now, but if there is, please reach out to me or Amy or somebody that we can get started on it as soon as possible.
Hey, Jim, I don't know if Luke's done, but there are some community leaders out there. I don't know if this is appropriate, but if they might have an opinion to share, I don't know. Not putting pressure on anybody, but just if they have something on the tip of their tongue, to give them an opportunity.
Is there
Come
anyone
on
here-
down.
Anyone here that would like to comment?
It's fine.
Very good.
Anybody on Zoom?
Well, does anyone have anything else that they would like to add? Or is there anyone in opposition with putting this on the July agenda at a 0.2% rate to take a vote?
I would just like to add, this affects all the cities and towns and the county as well. If we can give them, in addition to what's in the paper or maybe what's on the agenda, if we could put out some kind of communication, I think they'd be interested in putting some kind of effort into getting here the next meeting. If they,
And what we've done in the past is we've allowed public comment at first reading. We have a mandatory public hearing at second reading. So there will be two opportunities where they could speak.
And what you're saying there, I don't, when John T. read off the numbers, the reality is we are the ones that have to make the decision, but they are the ones that we all in different communities live in or are part of. that receive a benefit without taking any quote unquote political heat from doing so. And that's, that's just the reality of what our responsibility is. And that largest number, John, was Greenwood at what, 500,000?
No,
Oh, Greenwood was,
3 point.
A year?
no,
I think it was 2.4.
Greenwood would be around 2.2, 2.3.
A year?
No, Greenwood, sorry, Franklin approximately 2.2 per year. Greenwood would be approximately 2.7-ish, 2.6 per year.
So around over 10 years, $20 million.
Yeah,
So
more than that, 27.
So that, it isn't that we're just benefiting quote unquote in unincorporated areas, that the entire community benefits from it. And the other thing is that my experience has been, it's interesting when you listen quote unquote to the public, and perhaps the mailbox will change, but I've had one email about this. And people say, well, everybody's been calling me and everybody's been emailing me. I haven't gotten one call. Maybe I will after today. I've only gotten one email, and we all got the same email. It was Rob, the one that Rob responded to.
I haven't checked that.
So I mean, that's one out of 140,000. So I mean, I think they're looking to us to make a decision, and the few conversations that I've had is that it's been, we've just got to do something.
All right. Well, I think that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Rob, a second by John T. All those in favor?
I.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Thank you.